Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Crime and Entertainment. I have here today a very interesting guest. He actually reached out to me after he seen the episode I did on Ian Bick's podcast, and we had a phone conversation and kind of shared his story and different circumstances than mine, but could have wound up with a similar result. Um, I'll just let him tell it better to me. Obviously, let's bring on the show Clay Whelchel. Clay, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. How are you, Mr. Wade?
Ah, man, I couldn't be better. Couldn't be better. Um, Now you reached out to me through, I think, Facebook Messenger,
I
and
did.
kind of told me you had a similar story to mine. And you and I talked. I think for the first time we talked for about 2 hours,
Yep.
and it just kind of blew me away. Uh, everything that happened to you, and I think these stories are important to bring to light because it shows just how easy it can happen to someone, and even more so in your case, you had prior law enforcement you know in your background. So that's even worse that it can happen to law enforcement. I mean, it's terrible when it happens to anybody, but especially that's just showing you it's no holds barred, where it can go. Um,
Yep.
let's start off a little bit. Tell us a little bit about you, early life, where you grew up, and then we'll kind of progress into, you getting into law enforcement, and then we'll kind of ride into the story.
Okay. Yeah. My name's Clay Whelchel. I was born 1990 in Anderson, South Carolina. I grew up here most of my life. I've got two brothers, two sisters. My two brothers grew up in Florida. My sisters grew up here with me. Um, Growing up, I had a middle class family. I would say both of my parents worked at a plant. My dad ended up retiring from there after 21 years. My mom put in about 30 years at the same plant. When I was five, my parents divorced. My dad ended up moving away to Georgia. So I spent a lot of time back and forth between here and there. My stepdad came into my life around the age of five, and he's been there ever since. He's a second father to me. And, coming up through school, I had a lot of issues with going through my parents' divorce and all that kind of stuff and dealing with that. And there was a lot of behavioral issues that came out of that. And different things that happened through my childhood that caused a lot of issues, caused a lot of trauma, and I was in therapy pretty much, my whole childhood, dealing with different things. And so I, skated by through school, stayed in trouble all the time, um, just kind of on a very very rocky path. I remember several times hearing by the time I was 15, you'll be in jail or dead by the time you're 18 years old. Just the way I was going. Um, And, around the age of 17, I actually met an Army recruiter. And uh, he kind of took me under his wing. And, I mean, there was days where he would show up at my house at 5 o'clock in the morning before school, and we'd get out and run and do push-ups and do that kind of stuff just to get me out of the house and get me doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And my plan was as soon as I finished junior year at 17 years old, I was going to enlist, go to basic, come home, finish out senior year, and then go to AIT and continue on with my military career. Um, at the age of 17, that was my plan. And about 2 weeks before the end of my junior year, I found out from my guidance counselor that I had failed and not got enough credits to move on to my senior year. So I just walked out of school and quit. The moment I did that, my mom told me, "You're not in school anymore. You're not staying here anymore. Get out." So from then on, I've kind of been on my own and doing my own thing, um, and trying to make it. I stayed in Anderson for probably 3 or 4 years after dropping out of school, stayed in South Carolina, and then I met a girl and ended up moving to Georgia. I moved there. Her dad was in law enforcement there. It was something I was always kind of interested in. I either wanted to go the military route or law enforcement route.
Mm-hmm.
Um, since military kind of went out the window and I kind of screwed that up, I thought, let's try the law enforcement deal. So her dad got me hooked up with somebody that was there in Georgia, and I ended up getting on with the sheriff's office over there. Um, about the age of 21 is when I started in law enforcement over in Georgia. I worked over there for about 5 years, and then I left and came to back to South Carolina. Me and her split, ended up getting divorced, and I came back to South Carolina, met my current wife, and got back into law enforcement over here. I was in law enforcement over here for probably 3 years, and just kind of got burned out of it. Just tired of doing that kind of work. Wanted something different. Wanted something new, and and then the story kind of picks up from there.
So, what age are you at this point?
So at this point, after I leave law enforcement in South Carolina and I start getting in some other work, I'm probably 24, 25 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
What other work are you getting into here?
Different things. When I first left the sheriff's office, I had a pension and everything with the county, so I kind of wanted to hang on to that. So I went and got a job back with the county, just not in law enforcement.
Okay.
I actually worked with a disabilities and special needs board. Basically, what we did was have special needs adults that would, do different work for different businesses around town. And I basically would go get them supplies, help them do their job, help them do their thing, and then deliver the finished goods back to the plants or the businesses that we were doing the work for. So I basically ran a warehouse for them. And that's what I was doing at the time that all this kind of started. Um, this whole situation kind of started unfolding. And then I ended up leaving there. I got a job offer at a big plant here in Anderson that was paying really good money. They hadn't been around long. They built this really big facility, and before I got into law enforcement, I had tried my hand in manufacturing work. wasn't really for me, but this seemed like a totally different deal, so I went and tried that, and that's where I was at when the situation actually ended up coming to a head, and I ended up going to jail.
Okay, so explain the dynamics of this situation. I understand that was it your wife's sister?
It's my wife's first cousin's
First
kid.
cousin.
Yep. So what ended up happening is on Christmas Eve, like I said, I'm terrible with timelines and dates and all that. So it was 2017 on Christmas Eve. Me and my wife were sitting here at home, and she got a phone call from her aunt. Her aunt called her, basically said, "Look, uh, the aunt's daughter, which would be my wife's first cousin, had two kids that had gone into the system. Um, One of them had already been in the system for some time. The other one had just been born not long before that, and was going and had already been into the system, but hadn't been in as long. And basically asked, you know, we know that y'all been trying to have kids, hadn't been successful. Just wondering if y'all would be interested in taking both kids, because at this time the kids were in separate houses. So one kid was, in one house, and another kid was in another. So they were separated, and the family just kind of wanted to try to see if somebody would be willing to bring them in so they could get them together. Um, and me and my wife talked about it that night. We slept on it, and I won't ever forget. Once we get through my story, this will come back into play. I remember my aunt was battling cancer, and she was in the hospital, and we had went to the hospital to see her, and my mom was there, and me and my wife had kind of been, going over this whole thing and battling back and forth of this, if we should or if we shouldn't. Um, and I remember talking to my mom about it. My mom looked me square in my eyes and said, "This is not a good idea. I don't have a good feeling about it. I just don't think you should do it."
Mm-hmm.
And me being the rebel child like I've been since I was a kid, I basically said, "Well, I'm going to do what I want to do and prove you wrong." And so we ended up saying yes. We ended up going through the system. We actually went through court. The children were actually in Greenville County, where I'm in Anderson County, so we had to go to a different county. That was in January of 2018. We ended up going to court and getting the process started with the courts to be able to get custody of the children.
All right. So you guys did wind up gaining custody?
We did end up gaining custody. It took a couple months to be able to actually get the kids in our home. When you're going through, dealing with DSS or the state or anything like that, it's a process. It's not just, hey, we want to take these kids, and they just go, oh, okay, here's some kids. They come in, they do home studies. We have to go do drug tests. We have to go, the whole 9 yards. They do a whole background, run everything, make sure, you hadn't ever been fired from a job for any kind of craziness, or, you hadn't ever been charged with anything, or It's a whole deep dive into your past to make sure that you're fit to
Right.
be able to do this. So we ended up going through that, and they granted us custody. And the youngest child at the time was 9 months. The oldest child at the time was 2. So the youngest child, he was actually with his paternal grandmother, great grandmother, and she was actually at court the day that we got custody. So she had him there. So we ended up getting him at the courthouse the day that they granted us custody. So we got him there, and then we drove across town to go get the 2-year-old, and he was in a foster home, just with nobody new or anything like that, just a foster home. And so we went there and ended up picking him up, come home, and our life just kind of changed. We now had 2 kids. I'm 25. My wife's at the time was like 2021. So we're never had kids, don't have kids of our own, and now we're taking in 200 age of 2.
Yeah, that's a big adjustment.
Definitely, definitely. Um, and at the time, my wife was actually working at a daycare, so that was kind of fitting. We knew that that would help. And then plus, when you get kids from the state, there's all kind of stuff that you can, different things that you can utilize and different programs they have. So we were able to get daycare set up, and at no cost to us. The state took care of that because these kids belong to the state. They wasn't our kids. Um, we had to set up visits. We had to do visits with the parents. We had to do all that kind of stuff. And that was a tumultuous road there because we're talking about 2 parents that were addicted to drugs, that had prior abuse on the children. I remember the first day that we got the kids. We really didn't have a clue what we were doing. We're just kind of going by the seat of our pants and doing what we thought was best. We brought them home and did our thing for a few hours, and then when it was time to go to bed, we went and put them in the bath. And one of the first things that we noticed was the oldest one had some little small circular scars on his leg, and it almost looked like a fresh bug bite, like a red scar, but it wasn't itchy. It wasn't anything. He wasn't complaining about anything, so we didn't really know what it was. Later on we would come to learn what that was. But we just kind of looked the children over to make sure there wasn't nothing wrong and this and that, and the kids were fine. I mean, everything was great. Um, we had them for probably about a year, right at a year, and everything was going great. I mean, the only complaints that we really had was dealing with the parents. There were several times where we would set up, a meeting with the parents to be able to do a visit, something like that, and they wouldn't show up, or they'd show up 2 hours late. It was just but you're dealing with drug addicts. You're not dealing with people
Right.
that have the best track record. So,
Right.
and we kind of knew getting into it that that's what we were going to deal with. We knew that. But this was family, and my wife wanted to help, and I wanted to be there for her and do what she wanted to do, and we just kind of stuck by each other and bit the bullet and did it. And like I said, for a year, it was great. No complaints. Everything was perfect. The kids were growing. They were doing great. Just getting to be so smart, getting their own little personalities about them. At the time, I was on the side away from work. I was coaching little league football. They'd go out there, and the 2-year-old would be running around on the field with me. Just having a blast. And it was just amazing. Well, come about October of the next year. So this would have been October of 2018. We noticed that the mom, like I said, she's been addicted to drugs for a long time. She's really, really thin. Um, and she just the way she looked started changing. You could see it in her face. The clothes she was wearing were baggier. Just different things that we started noticing. So my wife immediately said, "I think she might be pregnant." So we confronted her. She denied it. She said no, she wasn't. And after we confronted her, her mom ended up calling my wife because I guess the cousin called the aunt saying, "Hey, they confronted me. I don't really know what to say. I don't know what to do." Because behind the scenes, they're trying to scheme and plot and get a way to get their kids. That's what they're doing behind the scenes during this whole time.
Right.
They're trying to find a way to get around the system and do something. That's what they're trying to do. That's why they ended up going to Greenville to have the other two kids, because they were trying to get to a different hospital so that, you know what I mean, stuff like that. And that's what they're
Right.
going to do. So the aunt actually ended up calling us, or calling my wife, and she said, "Hey, I've got a proposition for you. If you'll sign off, basically tell the state that Santana and Ian, which is the mother and father, yeah, you may want to take the names out. I don't know if you want to put names on here or not, but anyways, um, they ended up making a proposition to my wife saying, "Hey, if you'll go to the courts and say that the parents are clean, they've done everything they're supposed to do and everything, and they can have their kids back. And if you'll be on our side to give them their kids back, we'll give y'all the brand new baby. So it'll be just like y'all have." So basically, they're trying to trade kids.
Yeah, they're trying to give you the new one for the other two.
Exactly, exactly, because they didn't have any connection with the baby. You know
Right.
what I mean? And so me and my wife were just flabbergasted by this. We were like, "How in the world could you even ask somebody something like that?
Right.
You know, you ought to be trying to do whatever you have to do to get your kids back, not want us to lie for you so that we can do a 2-for-1 special and give you two of your kids back." And that don't even make any sense. But these
Right.
are just the kind of people we're dealing with. You know what I mean? This is just the kind of people we're dealing with. So the moment that happened, the whole dynamic between us and the parents and everything changed. Everything changed because now we saw what they were trying to do. We saw their whole scheme. The whole time we're trying to be there for them. We're trying to do everything we can to help them get their kids back. That's the goal, is for them to get their kids back. Straighten up, do what you got to do everything you can to get your kids back. You know, but the moment that they called and offered us that, we were like, absolutely, these people don't deserve kids. They don't deserve to ever have these. They don't care. Um, so we ended up getting confirmation that she was pregnant. They told us that she was 5 months pregnant. That's what we were told. So we set up on Christmas Eve. We actually rented out a little fellowship hall at a local church, at the church that we grew up in. Me and my wife both. And it's got basketball courts. It's got a playground. It's got all that kind of stuff, and it's enough room to where we could have the kids and be able to run around and do different things, and also where the parents could come, so we wasn't smothering them. They could have time with their kids because it was Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
So we rented out the fellowship hall, and they showed up. The parents showed up, and yeah, and we rented the fellowship hall for 2 hours. They showed up with only 30 minutes left before we had to give the keys back, and she's not pregnant anymore. And so we go, "What's going on?" And she
Something
says, "Oh, I
happened.
had the baby." Yeah. She said, "Oh, I had the baby. The baby's good. Everything's fine. My sister's got the baby." So she's like, I let the baby stay with her when we came here because the baby was only like 2 weeks old. We're like, the baby was staying with the sister so that she didn't bring it out in the cold weather, and all that made sense. We're like, okay, cool. So we get them inside and they're playing with the kids, and my wife steps out and calls the sister. And the sister says, "Absolutely not." Says the child was born with meth in the system, and DSS took it straight from the hospital. And basically, what they were doing is they didn't want us to find out that the baby was in DSS custody, because then we would get the kid, and then we would have all three of their kids tied up in the same case, and they wouldn't have a chance to get any of your kids back. Is probably what they was thinking at that moment.
Right. So they're not trying to let y'all know that, there's any issues with
Yeah,
DSS and anything. Okay.
exactly.
All right.
Exactly. So once we find that out, my wife and me, we talk about it. So we want to try to take the third one. Raise all three boys together. And just try to do the best we can by the kids, because at this point we could care less about the parents.
Mm-hmm.
At this point the parents have already shot themselves in the foot so many times. We're talking about a situation where all they had to do was straighten themselves up and they could have had their kids back in 3 months. We're going on a year and a half now.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And they've done nothing
Nothing to better the
to try.
situation.
No, and the whole time all they're doing is blaming everybody else. They blame the courts, they blame this, they blame. It's always somebody else's fault. They never took responsibility for anything ever. So, anyways, we ended up going to court, and we ended up getting custody of the baby. So we brought the baby home. The baby was 3 months old when he ended up coming to our house. So at this time now we've got a 3 month old, a 2 year old, and a 4 year old. Is what we've got in our house. Or I'm sorry, a 3 month old, a 1 year old, and a 4 year old
Mm-hmm.
is what we're looking at.
So
You know,
y'all added one to the bunch, and it's really, really different now. So
yeah, yeah, and a baby, and we're talking
yeah,
about a 3 month old that was just born with.
yeah,
Later on in the story, you'll see that we ended up
yeah,
getting medical records and stuff like
right,
that, and there was a lot of drug use,
yeah.
a lot of drug use.
Born way behind the eight ball. Let's put it like that.
Yes, yes, this child did not have the best start at life.
Right.
You know, and there's a whole story behind that. When the baby ended up being born at the hospital, they came back to Anderson to have the baby because the other two were born in Greenville, so they was trying to escape the system, trying to get by with something. Um, they came to Anderson, and one of the ways that they test for drugs in a newborn is they want to check the first diaper. So they take the first diaper, and it's called a meconium diaper. They do a test on it, and they can find out there if there's drug use. Then they can do blood draws and everything to try to find out levels and all that kind of stuff. Well, the parents knew this because they'd already been through this twice. So while the nurses are out, the parents change the first diaper, take it to another room, throw it in the trash can to try to, discard it to keep the nurses from. Well, when the nurses came back in the room, they noticed, oh, there's a queen diaper on the baby. Where's the other one? Then they go on a search, and then they ended up finding it. And it ended up after DSS was called to the hospital. There was a confrontation. The father threatened to bring a gun back to the hospital. I mean, it was a whole mess. But like I said, these are the kind of people we're dealing with. We're not dealing with the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
So we end up with the baby, and the baby's 3 months old. And at this time, um, my wife is working at the daycare. I'm working at the plant. I'd been there for a little over a year. My wife had been at the daycare for a couple years, and the baby is going to the same daycare my wife works at. The older two, because my wife works there, they have two separate. It's the same daycare, but they have two separate buildings.
Right.
There's one building on one side of town and one building on the other side of town, and they wanted my wife to send. They wanted the other two to go to the other building away from my wife, so that she wouldn't possibly have to be in their classroom teaching them and stuff like that. So there couldn't be any kind of conflict or anybody saying there's favoritism or any of that kind of stuff. They just wanted to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
So the older two boys went to one daycare. The baby went to the same one that my wife worked at. So, like I said, the baby's 3 months old. We're not really noticing anything. The baby was just a normal 3 month old baby. We're not noticing anything out of the ordinary, anything that would cause us to think that anything was wrong. Nothing. And you gotta think too. This is a child that's been taken by DSS and placed with family members that have the two older kids that have already been in DSS custody and have already been through all this stuff. So, we're talking about guardian ad litem. We're talking about caseworkers. We're talking about, you know, law enforcement involvement. We've got all this stuff going on around these kids. And so it's not like these kids are just ours and we're just doing whatever we want and nobody's keeping a check on these kids. These kids are checked on weekly.
Mm-hmm.
They've got caseworkers and guardian ad litems and everybody that go check on these kids all the time. The daycare is aware that these kids are in foster care through DSS. You need to keep an eye on these kids. These kids are at risk, is what they consider them. And there was never any complaints, never anything out of the blue. I mean, out of the ordinary saying that, anything was ever thought to be wrong with any of these children for a year and a half that we had them. Never. Not ever one question or ever one concern. When we got the baby, everything was going fine. We had the baby for 2 months. And I was at work. My wife was at work at the daycare. And my wife, I ended up getting a phone call through my job. Because in the plant, my cell phone didn't work. Couldn't nobody get in touch with me. So they ended up calling the actual plant.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the plant manager actually came and found me and said, hey, there's an issue with one of your kids. Your wife said she needs you to call this and that. And I'm like, okay. So at this point, I don't really know if it's a behavioral issue. I don't know which kid they're talking about. I don't really know what's going on. So I get back to my little department and I've got a phone in there and I call and I find out that something's wrong with the baby. The ambulance is on their way. I need to come to the hospital. So that's what I end up doing. I go to the hospital. I meet my wife there. They've got the baby at this time is 5 months old. They've got him stripped down, you know, in a room on a gurney, tubes everywhere, doctors, nurses everywhere. I mean, there's so many people in this room working on him that you can't even see him. I mean, it's just it was awful, just a sight, and not knowing what's going on. Um, when I finally I see my wife, she's sitting outside of the room that he was in, and the chaplain from the hospital sitting with her, and I'm like, oh my, like what is? And like I said, at this point, I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue what's going on. My
Ain't it
wife's
good when the
panicking.
chaplain's around? I can tell you that.
Yeah, and so at this point, I have no idea what's going on. Um, and my wife's sitting there and she's just all to pieces, and so at this point I go into the mode of what do I need to do to take care of the situation? Is there anybody I need to call? What do I need to do?
Mm-hmm.
So I end up the first phone call I make is to DSS to let DSS know what's going on. Second phone call I make is to the parents, the biological parents of the kids, to let them know what's going on. And at this point, I still really don't know what's happened. I just know something happened to the baby at daycare. We're at the hospital. They're working on him. That's really all I know at this point. Now, as people start showing up, I start getting the doctors come out and start updating us and telling us what's going on. And what they decided that they believe happened was that the daycare worker in the room with him had fed him, give him a bottle, laid him down, turned around to grab another child to feed them, heard gurgling, heard choking, coughing, turned around, the baby was blue, purple, pulled him up out of the crib, tried to figure out what was going on, couldn't, took him out in the hallway, laid him down. They started doing CPR on him. Ambulance was called. That was kind of all we knew.
Hey,
And my wife was actually the one that was doing CPR on him. They went and got her out of her classroom, and she actually went and did CPR, and she ended up talking to 911 operators and all that. And, I'm at work. I'm just kind of caught off guard by all this.
mm-hmm.
So the doctor ends up telling us, look, we've got him stable. We took about 8 ounces of fluid off of him, off his lungs. He's stable. He's breathing on his own. He don't have any kind of breathing machine, no kind of tubes. He's not on a ventilator. There's nothing like that. He's stable. Everything looks fine. So he's out of the woods, is what we're being told. But they have a children's hospital in Greenville that specializes in children and especially babies, like little kids. And they go, we want to take him to Greenville overnight just to keep an eye on him and make sure everything's good. He should be discharged tomorrow. That's what we're told. So we go, okay. So they end up flying him from Anderson to Greenville. We drive up to Greenville and meet them there. As soon as we walk in the doors at the Greenville Hospital, it feels like the mood to everyone has changed. Everybody. From anybody we talk to at the front desk, nurses, security guards, it just seems like everybody has got some kind of a odd aura about them. And we can't really figure out what's going on. We start asking questions. Nobody won't give us any answers. They're being very just, it's almost like they're being secretive about the situation. And we're like, we're basically this kid's parents. I mean, we have custody of this child. We want to know what's going on. So they end up putting us in a room, and they tell us, it takes a while for the baby to get through the process and everything when they bring them in through the ER and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to take a while. But they put us in a room, and we're sitting there. And I just happen to look up, and I see an investigator. He's got a sheriff's office star on his chest. He's in slacks, and he's an investigator. And so I go. At first, the first thing that pops in my head is the incident happened at daycare. They got to make sure there wasn't some kind of situation there. Normal procedure, nothing to really throw any alarm. Well, then I catch him looking in the room. And every time he looks in the room and I catch eyes with him, he looks away. And so that immediately just throws me being a law enforcement before, I kind of can read people. And it just kind of gave me that feeling of, that's odd, just kind of weird. And so, I'm starting to kind of get the feeling that something's not right. This isn't going the way that you would expect it to go. When you got, like I said, parents of these kids, guardians of these kids, one of them's injured, and we're being treated kind of like we don't have any involvement. And so I'm getting this, and so me and my wife end up talking about it, and we're basically just saying, this is probably just protocol. It's nothing, blah, 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 whatever. So I end up going from the hospital back to Anderson to get clothes so that we can go, because I'm planning on going to work the next day. My wife's going to stay at the hospital with the baby. So I drive back home to Anderson, get us a little bag of clothes together, all that kind of stuff. And I start heading back to the hospital. I'll try to call my wife. She doesn't answer. I try to call her again. She doesn't answer. So then I call my mother-in-law. She's at the hospital as well. And she answers and she says that they've taken my wife back to a room and they're talking to her. They're interviewing her. And I go, oh, okay. That, makes sense. She's in the daycare. Whatever happened at the daycare. At this point, we're all thinking it's just a freak accident that, nobody could control, nothing to worry about. So when I finally get back to the hospital and my wife comes out of the interview room, she is just pale white. And just, I mean, she just looks so tired and worn out and terrified and confused. And I could just see it all over her that something was up. Something was up. They immediately bring her back and grab me and want me to come back and talk. Now, this is the first time that I'm talking to anybody about anything that they're talking about. I have no clue. At this point, I still think that this baby was given a bottle, choked on his vomit or whatever, and that's all we're dealing with.
And you didn't have a chance to speak with your wife in this transition of what's going on or nothing.
They made sure that we didn't. So I get back to the room, and there's an investigator from DSS there, and there's also an investigator from the sheriff's office. And they start grilling me. I don't mean just asking questions just to, fill it out, whatever. I'm talking about this is a full-blown interrogation. And they've got me in there for probably 2.5 hours. And it's not, like I said, asking questions. It's why did you do this? That's the kind of questions that they're asking. And I am just mind blown at the transition that we just had from one hospital to another. From it being a freak accident to now they're accusing me of doing something to this child when I'm at work. And I'm just like, how are we even having this conversation right now? I don't even understand. So during this interview or interrogation, because this wasn't an interview, it comes out that what the information they got from my wife, which was true, was that the Saturday before, so the baby ended up going to the hospital on a Wednesday. So the Saturday before that, my mom and my stepdad, they both worked at the same plant. I told you about my mom had been there for 30 years.
Right.
And they was having like a family fun day. Basically, they had, jump houses and different little games and stuff like that for the kids. And they was having hot dogs and hamburgers and having a little cookout. And it was basically an employee appreciation, family appreciation type day at the plant.
Right.
So my wife had already had plans to go out with her sisters. They were going out to dinner or going out for lunch, going shopping, doing that kind of thing, what sisters do. And so my plan was to take the 3 kids to the family fun day. I would have my mom and my stepdad there to help me with the kids. It'd be something fun for the older 2 to do, get them out of the house, let them run around for a little bit, whatever. So that's the plan. So we get up that morning, and my wife gets up, I get up, we get the kids ready, we get them dressed. They're all ready to go. My wife leaves with her sisters. I get in the car with the three kids. We go straight to the plant. We do the family fun day at the plant. Kids are running around, baby's being fine, not fussing, eating, doing everything a normal baby would do. We leave from there. We're there for probably an hour, hour and a half. We leave from there. We're going to go. I'm going to take the kids to my dad's. Go spend some time with my dad. So we stop by McDonald's, grab the kids lunch, go to my dad's house. You know, there's pictures taken at my dad's. There's pictures taken at the family. There's documentation of this whole day. So we ended up going to my dad's. We stayed there for a couple hours. When we left my dad's, we ended up meeting my wife back here at the house. My wife jumped in the car. You know, by this time it's 6 o'clock at night. We end up going for dinner. Me and my wife and the kids. We go for dinner. The next day, we wake up. We got plans to meet the paternal great grandmother of the two youngest kids, the one that had custody of the middle child when we got them, that met us at the court, that same lady. We got plans to meet her for lunch at a restaurant so she can see the kids. We would do this periodically, once a month or so. The kids would either go hang out with her for a few hours, or we'd meet her at a park or meet her somewhere to let her see the kids. You know, so we ended up meeting her. There's pictures from that. They've got her testimony saying, you know, there was nothing out of the ordinary, no red flags or nothing. This is a great grandmother that had 4 kids of her own plus grandkids. You know, so you know, this is somebody that if somebody's going to see an issue, this is going to be one person that should see the issue. Nothing's wrong, perfectly fine. So that's Sunday. Monday, wake up, kids go to daycare with my wife. She takes the older 2 to their daycare, takes the baby with her to daycare. The guardian at Lightham, the baby's guardian at Lightham came and spent about 2 hours that day with the baby. In his notes, baby was laughing, baby was playing, baby was fine, not fussing, eating fine, temperament's good, no signs of anything. Tuesday, the baby's caseworker comes to the daycare. Same situation. Everything's fine, child's playful, baby's not crying, fussing, no signs of anything. Wednesday, he goes to the hospital. Well, by Wednesday night, they've convinced themselves that on Saturday, I did something to the child to cause the injuries that are now showing up on Wednesday. That's what they're accusing me of. And so I'm looking at them like, y'all have, I can tell at this point, this is them trying to put it on somebody.
Right.
And at this point, I'm pissed. I'm beyond pissed.
And did you keep,
know, and I'm
or did you tell him you wanted a lawyer?
So at that point, I talked to DSS and the investigator that night. Immediately after that, we went and got an attorney.
I was about to say, because a lot of people, especially if you're being charged or accused of something that you didn't do, your first instinct is to clear your name. You know, you want to make sure they have the facts. You're not thinking from the legal standpoint that you might need legal representation, but that's something that I try to make sure everybody's aware of. If you're questioned for any reason from law enforcement, for whatever the situation, even if you're saying that you had nothing 100%, absolutely nothing to do with whatever they're wanting to talk to you about, get an attorney. You know, if you say you want an attorney, they have to let you get one before they speak with you. And I know, like, the deep seatedness inside of you wants to tell what really happened and clear your name, but the harsh truth is, when it comes to stuff like that, they're not exactly seeking the truth; they're setting traps.
Yep. And during this conversation, that's what they were trying to do the whole time. And I, my personal opinion, it ended up being I did a great job during this interview.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say anything that would make them. I didn't give them anything that they didn't already have,
right.
And there was nothing there to give.
Right.
But just to your point, there don't have to be anything to give. You can say something that they can take out of context that you don't even mean, and they can twist and turn it and make it into something that it's not.
Right. They can.
Yeah, I mean, they can fabricate a motive. They can fabricate all this kind of stuff, and then end up using it against you later on down the road.
Yeah.
And that's what they were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to do that. So the decision was made that night that the older 2 kids, they were already somewhere else because we didn't bring them to the hospital, of course. They actually went to the house of the lady that owns the daycare. So the owner of the daycare ended up taking the older two boys with her. We were going to stay at the hospital with the baby. So at this point, I'm thinking in my head, if they think I did anything to this kid, why am I allowed to be in this hospital?
Mm-hmm.
That's my number one thought. Because me being past law enforcement, if there's an accusation and you honestly think that there's something to it, why would you ever let your subject stay with the victim? That doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they allowed that for 3 days. So they allowed us to stay in the hospital for 3 days after the baby, was already in the hospital. Now, come to find out what was actually going on with the baby. Now, they did tests in Anderson, and none of these things showed up on the test in Anderson. They checked his eyes, they did MRIs, they did everything, CAT scans, they did everything that they could to find out what was going on. The only thing they could find is the fluid in the lung. We've got the medical records, everything that says that. He goes to Greenville. Now all of a sudden, he's got bilateral subdural hematoma, which is bleeding on the back of the brain. He's got a hematoma on the front of his brain behind his eyes, and he's got bleeding on his retinas. So they're saying that this is consistent with what's called shaken baby syndrome.
Right.
So as soon as we hear the word shaken baby syndrome, I immediately go online and start researching.
Mm-hmm.
And shaken baby syndrome is a very controversial thing in the medical world. It's very controversial. I mean, there's books written about it. About basically, they say that the only way to get they call it the triad. So the bleeding behind the eyes, the bleeding on the front of the brain, the bleeding on the back of the brain. The only way you can have all three of those is by the forward and back shake
Right.
motion of the child. Car wrecks, it don't happen. Airplane crashes, it don't happen. Falling off of a bed, it don't happen. The only way it can happen is a violent back and forth motion of a child. Now, the problem with that the controversy comes in, is they say that that's the only three symptoms they need to diagnose a child with shaken baby syndrome. But the issue there is I'm 6'3", and at the time I was 400 pounds. If I grab a 5-month-old around the waist, around the ribs, around the arms, or whatever, and I shake him hard enough to cause those injuries, there's going to be some kind of physical evidence there.
You would think.
There's going to be. There's going to be bruising. There's going to be broken bones. Most of the time, whenever there's a baby that's diagnosed with shaken baby syndrome, the neck's broke, ribs are broke, arms are broke, and 95% of them don't survive. So the issue in this situation was they did what's called a skeletal survey. They actually did 3 of them, where they take images of his bones to see if there's any kind of compression or decompression on his bones. They do a full physical exam of his whole body. Any bruises, any markings, any kind of pressure, anything like that would show up, any redness. All 3 scans they did came out with 0 evidence that there was ever any kind of physical abuse to that child. 0. His neck was perfectly fine. No issues anywhere other than these 3 bleeds. And then they go on to tell us that the bleed on the back of his head, there's actually 2 of them. There's one that's old, that's from at least 4 months ago. And there's one that's new. So we immediately start thinking, well, he's only 5 months old. 4 months ago, he wasn't even with us. So how are we not looking at what's causing these bleeds other than shaken baby syndrome?
Right.
But once they get locked in on something, they're now not trying to prove what happened. They're trying to prove their theory right. And that's what they were doing. Because we kept bringing up other stuff. This baby was born with high amounts of drugs in the system. I'm not talking about marijuana. I'm talking about methamphetamine. There's all kind of different scenarios that could have happened to this child, but they didn't care. Because they weren't worried about the truth. They were worried about filling out their paperwork and getting one under the belt and putting it on somebody. That's what they were trying to do.
Right.
And it was very obvious from the beginning that that's what they were trying to do. So when we get an attorney sits down, looks over the paperwork, and goes, look, y'all don't have nothing to worry about. They ain't got no evidence that y'all did anything. their only witnesses that they can call saw the baby within the time frame that they're saying that these injuries happened and didn't report any injuries. So how can they now turn around and say, no, this happened? It doesn't make any sense. And he's telling us, y'all got nothing to worry about. So they end up kicking us out of the hospital after 3 days. They take custody of the kids back, and they actually allow my wife to place the kids wherever she wants them to go. That's how much they thought that we was abusing those kids. They actually allowed us to decide where the kids went. So we decided for the kids to go to my in-laws' house. The in-laws live right across the street from me. So I could look out my window every day and see the kids playing. And that's where they sent the kids. Put no contact orders on me and my wife. So we sat here for the next 2 months, for the next month, with these kids right across the street. And we did everything by the book that DSS asked us to do. We didn't go to see those kids. We didn't do anything. Then they came to us and said they had cleared my wife so the kids could return home, but they hadn't cleared me. So in order for the kids to come back home, I would have to leave. So that's what I did. Again, trying to do everything I can for these kids. At this point, it's not about me. It's about the kids. Mm-hmm. These kids have been uprooted their whole life and sent to different places and not raised around people that, that cared for them. I mean, you're talking about foster homes. And at this point, the baby's still in the hospital. So the older two kids are able to come home, and I have to leave. So I end up moving in with my dad. I go stay with my dad for 2 weeks. In that 2 weeks, kids never come back home. They keep coming up with excuse after excuse after excuse. On a Friday afternoon, 2 weeks after I moved in with my dad, the only time I'd seen my wife was when she would get off of work. Sometimes she would come by the house. And, we would see each other periodically. I wasn't coming to the house. I wasn't staying at the house. We was meeting out in public or meeting at my dad's house. And one Friday afternoon, we decide, let's go get dinner. So I come over here to the house, pull up in the driveway, pick my wife up. We take off to go get some food. We get almost to the restaurant, and my wife's dad calls and says, DSS and the law are here to get the kids. And my wife just starts. I mean, she just falls apart. Because, like I said, we've spent the last month doing everything they've asked us to do, and they still don't care. So we end up turning around and coming back, and they allow me and my wife both to go say bye to the kids. I get to give them a hug, tell them bye, tell them I love them, this and that. And once again, I'm the guy that they're saying did this to this baby, but yet they're allowing me to say goodbye to the kids. It makes zero sense. So the kids end up going back into foster care. And at this point, we're only dealing with family court issues. We're dealing with a DSS case. Mm-hmm. A false allegations that nobody has any proof of. But the way the family court system works, you don't need proof.
Right.
Family court system, all you need is preponderance of evidence. That's all you need.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, it's a 51-50 of what the evidence weighs. Mm-hmm. It's basically all they have to do is a 0.5% to say you could have possibly done this. They don't need any evidence saying that you did it. It's just got to be a possibility. And so at this point, that's all we're dealing with. Nothing's criminal. And at this point, we find out through our attorney that the same investigator that talked to me at the hospital that night, the same one that talked to my wife at the hospital that night, has taken the case in front of a judge 6 times and has been denied a warrant because there's no evidence. But he's trying. I mean, every other day he's showing up at the solicitor's office trying to get a warrant. They can't get one because there's no evidence.
And they won't give it. That's good. They won't give him one. I mean, at least they're not bowing to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right now.
So yeah. So we end up going about 5 months, and the kids are gone. We haven't seen the kids, and like I said, we hadn't seen the kids for a month before this. All of a sudden, we're sitting at home one day. We get a phone call, and it's the caseworker. and she says, "Hey, I need to sit down with you and Clay. There's been some new stuff come up. We need to sit down and talk." And we're just like, "We ain't seen these kids in 6 months. What could possibly be coming up now?" So we go up the road and meet her out in public somewhere, and she's got a little piece of paper, and she pulls it out, and she says, she looks at my wife, and she basically tells my wife, "This has nothing to do with you." She looks at me and she says, "You've been accused of sexually abusing the 4-year-old and physically abusing the 4-year-old by means of burning him with a fire stick on his ankle," is what the allegation is. So immediately, the first day we got the kids and we put them in the bath, pops in me and my wife's head, and we're like, "Whoa, this was documented before we even got the kids. These scars that y'all are talking about were there before." We're telling her, like, this is insane. We're flipping out at this point. We're like, what in the world is going on? So she looks at me and my wife and she says, "Look, I don't believe these allegations. The law enforcement has already looked into this. They don't believe these allegations are true. There's no evidence to say that these allegations are true. I just have to tell you about them. It's only a family court situation. There's no criminal liability. There's nothing like that coming. Basically, you're still in the same boat that you were in. Go to family court and fight it." Basically, what she tells us. So we're like, okay. So we go sit down with the attorney. The attorney's telling us the whole time, "Look, nothing to worry about. No evidence. Don't worry about it." So we go about 3 months, and no, it's probably another. Yeah. It was probably 3 months. Yeah. So, so in October is when the caseworker told us about these new allegations. In December, we get a call from our attorney, and he goes, "Hey, I need y'all to come to the office in the morning. We need to sit down and talk." Okay. So we walk into the lawyer's office, and we're sitting in like the little waiting room waiting for him to come out. And he just walks out. And he's got a piece of paper in his hand, and he sits it down, and he sits down on a little coffee table in front of me, and he says, "They got a warrant." And my heart just dropped out of my body. And I said, "For what?" And he said, "For the new allegation." And I go, "You promised me that this wasn't happening. You told me that this was not coming. Like, what is going on?" And he says, "Look, I don't know." He said, "I just got a call this morning that they got, I just got a call yesterday that they got the warrant. You need to go turn yourself in. Let's arrange it. Let's get everything set up so you can go do that." And I'm just like, I don't even know what to think. I don't know what to do. And at this point, he don't even know what they're charging me with. They didn't even tell him that. And so I look at him and I just go, "So where do we go from here?" And he goes, we don't go anywhere from here. I don't represent people with those kind of charges."
Damn.
And
So
I
he
go,
and he's just leaving you.
"Yeah." And so I go, "Well, what am I supposed to do then?" And he says, "Well, there's a guy downtown that's really good at this kind of stuff. I think you ought to go sit down and talk to him." And so we went. Me and my wife. At this point, I'm just, I'm a mess. I don't even know what to think. I mean, to be honest with you, the only thing in my mind is the easy way out. Is really what I was thinking at that point, because I'm just like, where do I go from here? You
Yeah,
know?
especially those kind of charges, man. And what people don't realize is until you're in that situation, because people always think, well, if I didn't do it, I would stand my ground. Yeah, that's what you want to do. But like when the reality sets in that that's what you're being charged with and you're about to be arrested for it, and this is no longer a hypothetical situation, it's a lot different.
Yeah, so it's a lot different.
Right.
And then also with those kind of charges, people look at it and go, well, how would they ever arrest somebody if there wasn't some kind of evidence? There has to be something there.
Right.
That's I mean that's
You would think most people think that, but that damn sure ain't the truth.
no, it's not. So we end up going to this other attorney's office. He ends up calling the investigator, finds out what the charges are, And I remember he sat down a piece of paper in front of me while he's on the phone, and he wrote CSC third, CSC second, CSC first. He put a check mark by third, he put a little dash by second, and he put an X by third. And I mean by first. And he said, if it's third, you're probably all right. If it's second, you might be okay. If it's first, you're screwed. Basically what he told us. First is life in prison without parole. First is as bad as it gets. First is second, the only charge close to murder without killing someone. That's as bad as it gets. So he's on the phone with the investigator, and he just looks over and circles CSC first. And he puts 25Y beside it.
Damn.
And I just look at my wife, and I'm just like, what are we supposed to do? So at this point, you know, we've already paid one attorney, you know, money for the DSS case. He's now basically said, screw y'all, I'm not representing you in the criminal stuff. So now we've got to go to a different attorney. So this attorney gets off the phone, and we find out then this is a whole new investigator. The original investigator that was there when the stuff happened with the baby had quit the sheriff's office and wasn't there anymore. This is a new investigator, brand new on the job, first time ever being an investigator, coming in and basically rerunning his cases is basically what we're finding out. So what we found out was this case had already been closed. This case had already been looked at by judges, by solicitors, by investigators, by everybody, and said, there's no evidence. We don't have a case here. New investigator comes in, finagles some things, moves some words around, changes some stuff, moves this around, redoes some paperwork, takes it to a solicitor, sweet talks him, and gets a warrant. That's what we end up finding out has happened.
So let me just take a stab. Newly promoted, trying to make a name, making something out of nothing, and maybe not even necessarily looking for a conviction, but wants to make it seem like he's doing his job and putting his nose to the grindstone, so to speak, all while your life is hanging in the balance for him to look good in front of his coworkers.
Yeah, exactly. So after that, the attorney gets off the phone with the investigator, and he's just like, you know, you really only got one choice, and it's to fight this thing head on. He said, you need to go turn yourself in tomorrow. He said, get in there, try to get a bond, get out, fight this. He's like, that's what you got to do. I go, okay. I said, so money wise, what am I looking at? And he says, 250,000. And I said, excuse me?
Damn.
And I said, how much is the retainer? He said, 250,000. I said, what? He said, and that's just for me, and I don't do these kind of cases. He said, I've got a specialist out of Columbia that's another attorney that specializes in these kind of cases, and she's another 250,000. And this is all upfront money. This isn't I pay you 10,000 now and we pay on it for the rest of our lives. This is right. 250 and 250 to just start on the case.
That's a half a million to take your case, not counting any sort of. I mean, whenever they interview anybody or whenever they send a damn sheet of paper or a phone call, that's all tacking up on the money.
Yeah.
That's just a $500,000 to look at your case.
And so me and my wife were sitting there looking at each other, and she was working at a daycare that once all this happened with the kids, she left. You know, I'm working at a plant where I'm making okay money, you know, $20 an hour, but we're barely surviving. Where do we come up with $500,000? You don't.
Not designed for you to.
No, exactly. It's stacked against you. And so we sit down. We end up coming home that night. I barely get any sleep, and it's planned for me to be at the sheriff's office at noon the next day to turn myself in. And we call all the family. Everybody comes. We're going to meet for lunch before I go at a Mexican restaurant. Go have some lunch with the family. Say our goodbyes because I have no idea what's coming. I don't even know what I'm walking into. So the plan that we come up with is, look, let's go turn yourself in. Let's get you a public defender. Just while you're in jail, try to get you out on a bond, and then we can start working on getting you an attorney from there. Let's just let them handle the upfront portion. Once we get you out, we'll be good. So I end up going to the sheriff's office. I turn myself in. And immediately, because I'm ex law enforcement, I worked inside of this jail that I'm now walking into. I mean, this is where I work. The same officer that's now patting me down inside of this jail, I've patted down people right beside. You know, that's what I'm walking into. And so they get me inside, they do the pat down, do my fingerprints, do everything, get me through the system, stick me in a holding cell, and I'm just there. Now all of a sudden it's reality. I'm in jail. And I don't know how long I'm there. And the first thing that's going through my mind is, are they going to catch on that I'm ex-law enforcement? I used to work here. I don't need to be put with anybody else. That's the first thing that I think of. And then I go to think, well, it doesn't even matter if I'm ex-law enforcement or not. Look at the charges that I've got. I mean,
Yeah, because you know as well as I do, being taking people in there, the word inside of a detention center, county jail, travels of why you're in there. A lot of times they might even know you're coming before you even get there, especially with the kind of charges that you're going in there with. You've already got a target on your back.
Yeah, so they stick me in a holding cell, and the next morning I've got to get up and see a magistrate judge. And I already know this is a big charge, charges this big, general sessions charge. You're not getting a bond from a magistrate judge.
Right. Got to see a circuit court.
So I wake up the next morning and I go to the magistrate judge. Of course, my bond's denied. They dress me out and they put me in a cell by myself, and I'm tucked away. I mean, I'm just away from everybody. Now, with me being ex-law enforcement, they have to be super, super careful about moving me inside of this jail. Because if anything happens to me, they're liable.
Mm-hmm.
They know what the situation is. They know how to handle it. If they don't do their job, so they're super careful about this stuff. So the section of the jail that I was in, it's a very old jail. It was built in the 1950s. So we're talking about bar fronts, sliding doors, big skeleton keys, old school jail. Now in my cell, I didn't have a shower or anything. I only had a toilet seat combo, a bed, and a little writing desk. That's all I had. And the way my cell was you had your cell. There was bar fronts. Well, then there was almost like a little foyer, and there was a door that closed, and then there was a hallway where everybody else walked. So not only was I shut behind bars, I was shut behind an exterior door where I couldn't even see out into the hallway. So I'm completely isolated, locked away. Anytime they bring me out of that cell for anything, to go to medical, to go to a visit, to go to because I'd have to be brought up to go to the shower. I was shackled, handcuffed, taken on my knees, shackled, handcuffed, removed, take my shower, do whatever I need to do, shackled, handcuffed, back to my cell, back on my knees, the whole 9 yards every time I came out. So I was in that particular cell for a month.
Damn.
I sat there for 30 days, and it's 23-1. So I was on lockdown 23 hours a day. I come out of the cell for an hour a day to shower, use the phone, order commissary, do whatever I need to do. And of course, if you got visits, you go for visits. We got 2 visits a week.
What's your mindset at this point in here? Like, how are you getting through the day?
Sleep. All I did, sleep and read. And at this point, I'm at, and I'm not gonna lie to you, and this is I don't see how anybody in my situation could do anything any different. When I go to the showers, there's inmates right around the hall from me. They know that I'm being kept separate from everybody else. They know when they hear those shackles and handcuffs, everybody else doesn't move like that.
Right.
Who's this guy and what did he do? Well, they end up finding out through guards my name. Then they ended up finding out through guards that I used to work there. So now they want to know what I'm. So now they start questioning what I'm charged with. So I just make up a lie and just say, "Oh, I got into a fight with a guy. Ended up he hit his head. He ended up dying. They charged me with manslaughter." That's just the story that I come up with.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, once I tell them that, they won't ask no more questions. That's a believable story. It happens. I'm ex law enforcement. Blah 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 blah. Right. And some of these inmates knew me. Some of these inmates called me by my nickname when I worked at the jail. I mean, like, they knew who I was. And so I won't ever forget. One day I was in the shower. I was in the shower room. And the showers are kind of at the head of the hallway. And down both sides of the hallway are cells. And these are one-man cells. They're actually 5x5 cells. They're 5 foot wide and 5 foot long. So a 6 foot person can't even lay down. These are really, really tight. They call it fed side.
Right.
And it's complete lockdown 23 hours a day. They're in the same situation I am, except for they're beside people they can talk to and all that. I have no communication with anybody. So I'm actually on the phone. I get out the shower and I'm on the phone. And all of a sudden I hear one of them yell down the hallway, "The child molester's in the shower." And my heart just drops. And I was actually on the phone with my wife and she heard it too. And then the threat started. Then don't let me catch you, this and that. And the whole time I'm like, I don't know what y'all talking about. Y'all crazy. Y'all ain't talking about me. You know what I mean? Trying to do the whole thing, but in all reality, that's what I'm there for. Whether I did it or not, they don't care. That's
right.
what I'm there for. And this is something that I've always been confused about with the prison system. Is you hear about other prisoners hurting child molesters or hurting discharge or hurting people that do this. So the thing that confuses me about that is we don't trust the police until we get on the inside. Now all of a sudden we trust the police.
Right. And I was just sitting there thinking about that till you said it, because it's like in this situation, you blame the police for not doing their job and wrongfully charging you. But you kind of got to blame the mindset of the prisoners too, because they're believing it and they're going off what the charge is. So 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, they done this to me. They done this to me. But yet, and I think it's just a stigma with that charge is what it is.
And that's something that going through this has changed me a lot. I used to, when I'd see on the front page of the paper, so-and-so did this,
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm glad they got that son of a bitch off the street.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think, man, everybody has. I think there's not a soul watching this podcast or around that hasn't seen anything with someone that's accused of what you were accused of and not thought to themselves, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
now you
off that word.
Yeah, well, of course. And you got to think too. At this moment, I'm a month in, and I still have not talked to one. I have never been questioned about this crime. I've never been questioned. I've never been talked to. I haven't seen my public defender yet. I haven't been given any information on what the accusation is. All I know is I'm being charged with this. I don't have a clue what's going on. My wife don't know. Nobody knows anything. I'm just stuck in jail with a charge that I have no idea what the circumstances behind it are.
That's got to be so disheartening, man, because the wheels of justice turn very, very slow. But being in a solitary type cell situation like you are, it's got to be unimaginable slow.
So, and another thing that happened was the day they booked me in, they were supposed to book me in what they call an offline jail log. So I was supposed to go into the system as only being internal, not external. So I was not ever supposed to have my mugshot on the website where you can go see it. My charges, none of my stuff was ever supposed to be published, to be public record, nothing, because I'm an officer.
Mm-hmm.
All it would take is for somebody to see my name, see my charge, find my wife, show up at my house, and kill her.
Yeah. And that's
It's
that's
that.
there's been cases of that happening, or burn the house down, or whatever the case. You
Yeah,
know what I'm saying?
exactly. And so what ended up happening is they didn't do that.
Thank
So
God.
for the first about 8 hours, no, I'm saying they didn't do that, as in the jail didn't do what they were supposed to do and keep me off
Oh,
live.
so they did it. They put you in public. I got you. Okay.
So the first 8 hours, my mugshot and everything was published, public record. So by this time, the family of the children have ended up getting their hands on it and are now posting it on Facebook. It's getting sent around, and I'm in jail. I have no idea any of this is going on. My wife, on the other hand, is on the outside seeing all this. So, then phone calls are made of why is this? This isn't supposed to be this way. Blah 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 blah. They apologize. They take it down. Well, in the time that they took it down, they didn't do that right either because they ended up taking me off of the public defender's list. So the public defender goes through the jail roster every day, and they say this person got booked, this person got booked, this person got booked. I need to go see them. Well, because there was an 8 hour gap where I was online, and then all of a sudden I'm offline, and they ended up taking me off the public defender's list. I basically wasn't in jail to the public defender. So I went that first month without ever talking to an attorney.
Jeez.
So and it was Christmas time. So because I went to jail December the 5th is when I was booked in. So I sat there for 30 days, never talking to anyone. And in that moment, man, you want to talk about your mind playing tricks on you. I mean, I'm thinking of just, I'm thinking so much, and there's so much going on in my head that I literally just can't even get a moment of peace. I can't get a moment of just quiet. And I'm sitting in a cell by myself where I can't hear anybody. And I can't get a moment of quiet because of everything that's just running through my head.
Oh, I got you.
And the days are starting to run together. I'm 30 days in, and it feels like I'm 100 days in. I don't know what's going on. And I ask people every day, an officer comes in to feed me lunch, and I'm like, yo, can we please get a public defender down here to see me? Yeah, we'll take care of it. Another week goes by. It's like that just over and over and over and over. And I'm just, at this point, I'm just like, man, if I had a sure way to get out of this, I think I would take it right now. If you catch my drift.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that mentally, that's where I'm at. Because it's bad enough to be charged with something like that, but it's even worse to not even know the circumstances. I don't even know the details. I don't even know what they're saying I did. I don't have a clue. I just know that I'm sitting in an 8x8 cell by myself 23 hours a day for 30 days now with no answers to anything. So my mom ends up having to go to the public defender's office in tears and finds out that this is what's happened. And it was a mistake on the jail's part, blah, 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 blah. So my mom tells them, she goes, who's the best public defender y'all got? And we all know that public defenders ain't worth much.
No. And it's not to disparage them, but they're not given the capabilities to be worth much. That they're glorified plea bargainers is what they are. They don't have the legal resources to build a case, to gather evidence, to interview people, to do proper, investigative work. Their job is to basically get you the best deal possible, not to try to prove your innocence.
Yeah, and so my mom basically told them, look, who's the best y'all got? And they go, well, we got a lady that was had a private practice. She was also the assistant to the solicitor, and she gets her hours in here at the public defender's office to do her pro bono work because they have to do so much pro bono work. Mm-hmm. And they go, we can try to get him to her. So they end up doing that. And I'm gonna say this name, and you can keep it in because this lady right here, I owe her a bunch when it comes to my situation. Her name is Patty Ferguson, and I found out not long ago that she's back at the solicitor's office. She's working for the prosecutor, and she is absolutely amazing at what she does. She's no nonsense, pit bull. I mean, me and you's talking like this right here, right now. I remember the first time I met Patty, I went and I sat and I tried to talk to her like this, and she cut me off. And she goes, "Shut up! I don't want to hear it. What you say means nothing to me. All I care about is what they got. All I care about. We'll get to your stuff later. We got to figure out what they got. We can't build the fence on ghosts."
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, because it ain't what you
Because
see, it's what they can prove.
exactly. And to me, I was taken back. I was like, "Whoa, why is she talking to me like this? I'm the you know what I mean?" But what it was is she didn't want me to. She didn't want me to work myself up to the point where I'm freaking out. She also didn't want me to get my hopes up. And that's the thing that attorneys a lot of times do. They sell these cases to people. It would have been so easy for that guy that wanted 250 grand to go, "Shoot, you shoot me 250,000, I'll get you off on this in a week."
Oh yeah.
And how many people would have said, "Okay, I'm gonna sell everything I got
Right.
just to get out of this." And but the reality is he might tell you that, and then a week comes and he can't do what he thinks he's gonna do, and next thing you know, here we are. So that's the one thing I can say about Patty. Was she was super realistic. She looked me dead in my eyes and she said, "You may." We don't know. We don't know until we know.
Right.
And right now we don't know anything. She said, "Right now the most important thing is to get you a bond and get you out of here. It's a lot easier to fight a case on the outside than
You're
it is
telling
sitting
me,
behind
brother.
these walls." So I'm gonna put these are dying. So she ended up. I saw her within the first 2 months. Well, I'll go back a little bit. I spent 30 days in that one cell, and they ended up moving me from there. They woke me up in the middle of the night one night and said, "We got somebody that needs this cell. We're going to take you up to the pods." Me have working there before, I knew the pods is with other inmates.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to be in the pods. So I immediately start going, "Oh, y'all got something screwed up. I can't go up there." I'm like, y'all ain't about to, y'all setting me up for something.
Yeah.
So we end up going up there, and it ends up what an absolute and this is a crazy thing for me to say, but what an absolute blessing it was to move me from where I was to up there. And yes, I was around inmates. Not one of them judged me. Not one of them threatened me. Not one of them tried to do anything. They did nothing but try to lift my spirits. We did Bible study every day. They get up and preach sermons. We all watched TV together. Everything. Now me, I had to be separated. So I was in my cell 23 hours a day while they're out on rec doing their thing. I'm in my cell. But I can see the TV. I've got a radio I can hear. They're sitting and talking to me, you know. And at this point, I'm getting to the point where I'm comfortable with these people. Not that I want to be there, but I'm here. I don't have another choice.
You got to make the best of the situation.
Exactly. And I remember I'm sitting there. I remember, for instance, the first day I walked into the pods. As soon as I walked in, I heard a guy from down the cell block say, "Is that Clay Whelchel?" And I was like, "Oh God, that's not good." So I get in my cell and I'm like, "Oh my God, these people know who I am. Like, this is about to be bad." They popped the door and let him out for rec, and it was my sister's ex-husband's nephew that I grew up with. And he'd been in and out of jail his whole life, and I grew up with him and his family. And he just sits by my door and we're just telling old stories. "You remember when we did this? You remember when we did that?" And it's just like there's no peace in there. There is no relax in there. But that's as close to it as I could have gotten.
Right.
I'm not having to worry about, what people are saying, what they're doing. I mean, dude, I didn't have any food. They were sending me soups. They were sending me this, sending me that, taking care of me, doing everything they could to try to make it as easy as could possibly be. And I don't know where those guys are now. A lot of them, I know one of them, the one that I was talking about, my sister's ex-husband's nephew. I know he's out and doing well right now. He ended up getting sober and straightening his life up, and I'm so proud of him for that. A lot of those other guys, man, they may be sitting down the road somewhere. They may be, there's some of them that probably got life sentences, but I could not have made it as far as I made it if it wasn't for them. I'm being 100% honest. And this is coming from somebody that was a corrections officer. This is somebody that was on the other team. I played for the other team. I was against these guys.
And that's something that I think a lot of people have this misconception about. Now, look, jail is jail. It's not a fun place. It's not somewhere you want to be. I think everyone should experience somewhat of a version of it just to have an understanding, but it's not as bad, at least in my situation. It sounds like yours is we may have thought going in, because there was a lot of positivity that I, experienced in there. I wasn't necessarily talking about my case, but I was listening to the conversations with some of the people in there, and they were telling this one young guy, like, man, you got a good head on your shoulders. You need to straighten your shit out. When you get out, you need to do this. And the guy's like, well, now I got a record. And he's like, open up a landscaping company, get you a lawnmower, get you a weed eater, cut grass, use that, build up, get client. They're building each other up to do better. It's not like, now don't get me wrong, I heard some flip sides of that too. I heard people talking about trying to get transferred to a prison to take somebody out and all that. I heard that too, but it's not all that. There are some people in there with the aspirations to get out, do better, become a productive member of society. So it's not all doom and gloom. Don't get me wrong. It's in there. It's in there a lot, but there is a lot of positivity too. And I'm glad that at least worked out for you in that situation, because that could have went real bad.
Yeah. And luckily there wasn't ever a time where I was, out in the day room with other people and other people moving around. It was never a situation like that. So I wasn't real worried about my safety as far as physically. But the mental aspect of being stuck in a cell while other guys are walking around and can say whatever they want to, that can be an absolute living hell.
Oh,
and it
yeah.
was for the first 30 days I was there. The first 30 days I was there, I was in an absolute total mental hell. But when I ended up getting up there to those pods, it was just a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it wasn't good. I don't, you couldn't pay me $1 million to go back tomorrow.
Right.
But in that situation, you've got to try to find some kind of positivity, or you'll never make it. You'll never make it. If you're sitting there in your own head and depressed and down and everything else about your situation, you'll never make it. Never make it. Mm-hmm. You've got to find some kind of light, something to pick you up a little bit, and like I said, I don't know where a lot of those guys are, but man, they helped me more than they would ever know, just mentally being able to get through that. Because I'm talking about guys that, there was one guy in there, he'd already been sitting in the county for 4 years, waiting on trial. For 4 years, he sat in the county waiting on trial. And about, I don't know, a month after I got out, they ended up trying him and convicting him, and he ended up getting like 180 something years.
Damn.
Yeah. But while I was in there, dude was just, he would tell me what good books. We'd trade books back and forth. My batteries would die on my radio. He'd send me an extra thing of batteries, and I'd get him back on commissary day. Like, it's just like helping each other out and trying to make, because we're all in it. We all got to be here.
Right.
So, and it changed my perspective on what a criminal is in our world, because a lot of these guys it's more about their social aspect and their environment that they're living in that causes a lot of these issues. It's not who they are. They're not doing it because they want to do it. A lot of them are doing it because they don't see any other way.
Right. So how long did you wind up doing in there before you had to break in this case?
So I sat down in the first cell for 30 days, and I sat in the second in the pods for 30 days. And we ended up getting in front of, and at this time I haven't seen a judge, I haven't done anything. So they ended up getting in front of a circuit court judge, and my attorney tells me, good chance you get denied. Don't get your hopes up, right? They take us in there and take me up in front of the judge, and he ends up granting me a bond of $125,000 with home incarceration. So he's going to send me home on a monitor. And it takes 2 or 3 days to get the process done, get me out, get me on the monitor, all that kind of stuff. So all in all, I was in there for about 65 days. Something like that is what I ended up being in jail for.
So you had to wait for that circuit court to come around to be seen by that judge, because in most cases, and I'm assuming it's the same way up there, it bounces from county to county. So if it's not in your county whenever you get in there, you have to wait for it.
I had just missed it, like literally like 3 days before I went, because I turned myself in on a Friday, and I had it was just in Anderson like that Wednesday.
Well, I mean, it may have worked out better, because if you didn't have time to land that lawyer, you may have gotten stuck with a different public defender who may not have done as good as job. And so it might have worked out a little better for you. I know it sucked that you had to be in there that whole time, for it to roll back around. But it sounds like at this point, all cards kind of fell your way as much as they could in this situation. So you make bond. That's got to be a relief. And I'm assuming now your next mental process is to start fighting this thing.
Yeah, so at this point I get out. Now that I'm out and I go back to work, I'm on the monitor. I'm allowed to go to work. I'm allowed to go to the doctor, the attorney.
They let you keep your job?
My job, the plant that I worked at stuck by me the whole time. They allowed me to come back to work. They allowed me to come back to work. I had the monitor on, because I worked 12-hour shifts. That monitor would only last about 12 hours. So they actually allowed me, they didn't want food in the production area, but they allowed me, so that everybody else wasn't around and I didn't have to charge it in front of everybody. They allowed me to sit in my department and eat, so that I could charge my monitor and all that stuff, by myself. Did everything, like I said, nothing but great things to say about them. They stuck by me. I mean, what job would do that?
Not many.
Leave a job for 60 days, with a guy that's charged with what I was charged with.
Yeah, that's that's speaking volumes, because they cut my ass loose as soon as I got out. My charges were obviously a little different, but they cut my ass loose as soon as I got out. So not me, and especially South Carolina is a right to work state, so they don't necessarily have to have a reason to fire your ass.
So yeah, I ended up going back to work, and man, the monitor, you want to talk about a racket? That's a racket.
Oh yeah.
You're talking about, was it $180 a week?
Damn.
Yeah. Yeah, just to be on the monitor.
Just to be on it. See, I was fortunate. I didn't have a monitor. They never put me on a monitor.
Yeah, and then if you miss a week, I mean, this is what I'm saying. This is the kind of stuff that drives me crazy about our system, and I didn't realize any of this until I got into it. Mm-hmm. Right? Let's say you go to jail for DUI, right? Let's say they suspend your license. All right, you get out of jail, you get called on a driving under suspension. All right, they convict you of driving under suspension. Let's say it's your third offense. Instead of sending you in prison for driving under suspension, they put you on a monitor. Right? They're gonna put you on a monitor for a year. Give you a year of home detention. Well, every week you have to go to the monitor place to go check in, right? Well, where I'm at in Anderson, there is no monitor place. The monitor place is an hour and a half away in another county. So in order for me to go do my check-ins, I have to get an hour and a half up the road. Dang. Now, if I'm sitting here on a suspended license, how do you expect me to get up there?
Yeah.
I got to ask this person and ask that person, or I got to risk it for the biscuit and drive up there.
Yeah. They'll probably ask you how you got there. It's all a racket, man.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's one door after another that's all failures behind it. They want you to walk through a door with a failure behind it constantly. They set you up for it.
It's not set up for you to, rise above it when you get out. Guilty, innocent, whatever the case may be. It is the system is designed for you to fall back into it.
Yep, 100%, 100%. So, anyways, I'm on the monitor. I end up being on that for about 2 years, and at this point, about 2 years after I'm out, well, it's about a year and a half after I'm out, counting the 2 months that I was in. We're now coming up on the family court case coming up for trial. So they're actually going to take the family court case to trial. So the allegations and everything going through family court or DSS has nothing to do with my criminal charges. It's only to deal with family court. It's about to go through. Mm-hmm. So when I get out, of course I'm back to work. I don't have a public defender anymore because I'm back to work. So I end up. My sister has a neighbor that was an attorney, and she's a very small town attorney. She's worked for the prosecutor before. She worked for the solicitor's office before. She was DSS's attorney at one time, and she basically said, "Look, I'll do it for as cheap as possible, just to help y'all out." And that's who I ended up going with. So I got out on bond, on the monitor, and I get this new attorney, and we start getting discovery for the family court case. So now I'm starting to find out what the allegations are. At this point, I still don't know. I still don't even know what I'm really being accused of, right? So we end up finding out what the allegations are is that not only me, but the oldest child's father or stepfather sexually abused this child in my home is what they're accusing me of. Us doing it together. Okay? Not only are they saying that we did it together, but that each other witnessed the other one do it. So first thing that pops in my mind is, well, why isn't he in jail? The same thing they said about me was said about him, and he also supposedly witnessed me, so that don't even make any sense why they're not. And he's the drug addict. He's the one that's already been to jail before.
Yeah, drug addict or not, if they're accusing both of you of this crime, then you both should be in there. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not what ended up happening. So we come to find out that that's what it was. We also come to find out that this child is using language that a 4-year-old is not going to say. When they start asking, what's these body parts on this little drawing that they have in this interview room where they interview this child, when they get to the male genitalia part, he says penis. He's a 4-year-old. So that to me automatically, if you're an investigator, should throw up a red flag. It should be like, where the hell did he learn that word from?
Right.
Well, they don't care about any of that. They just throw it at me and go deal with it. Basically is what they do. So we end up getting all the way to trial for the family court stuff. The judge basically is, what he's doing is he's going to have a hearing where he wants to hear the witnesses from both sides to decide what he's going to allow and what he's not going to allow so that he can try to shorten the trial down as much as possible. Basically, they've allotted us a week for trial, and they want us to each side to present their witnesses so the judge can decide what he's going to allow in and what he's not. Make sure this witness isn't saying the same thing this one is so we can cut one of them out, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also it was a hearing to decide whether they was going to allow the child to testify or not.
Okay.
The parent, now this family court case wasn't just against me and my wife, this was also against the biological parent because this was also their family court stuff dealing with the kids getting taken in the first place. So it's all wrapped into one big case. So that's why it's a week-long trial.
Right.
Well, the first witness they call is the foster mom that ended up with the kids after they left us. So when the kids left us, they went to my in-laws' house, they left the in-laws, and they went to this foster mom. They get her on the stand, they swear her in. Before they can even ask any questions, she basically stops the court and looks at the judge and goes, "Judge, there's something I want to say. I've been waiting to get here to say it. I've already tried my best to let this be known, but nobody wants to listen." She said 3 days after Clay went to jail, the child came to me and told me that his mom and his daddy told him to make this story up and promised him toys and a dirt bike if he said these things about Clay to get Clay in trouble. and he now realized that he lied. And I think what she ended up telling us later on was that he had gotten caught lying about something at school and had gotten in trouble. And so she just asked him, you don't lie, lying's bad, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden he just comes out with, oh, I lied about Clay. And she goes, what? And then he goes into it that my parents have promised me this and promised me that if I made these things up.
Holy shit.
And let me tell you, man, as soon as she said that, I honestly felt the weight just come off of me. I broke down. I'm squalling. I'm screaming. I'm cussing at people. I just don't. My mind is completely just in a different place.
Where you sitting at in the courtroom?
I'm right in front of the judge's bench at the defense table.
Okay.
And my lawyer's sitting beside me. My wife's on the other side of her. And then, so there's actually four parties really. There's a guardian ad litem that's there. He's represented by his attorney. DSS is there with their attorneys. I'm there. Me and my wife are there with our attorney, and the biological parents are there, and they're representing themselves. And she said this in front of the whole court. So the biological parents are sitting there, and I'm just like, you son of a bitches. You know what I mean? Like, you son of a bitch. Like, we did nothing but try to help you. We took your kids to try to help you. And this is what we get. This is what you do. And then not to mention the shoddy investigation work that DSS and the sheriff's office have done. And like I said, at this point, this is just a family court case. This has nothing to do with the criminal stuff. It's still not over with.
Yeah.
I believe that this is what's going to end up it being over with, but at this point, I don't have a clue.
Yeah, it's still there. It's still looming.
I'm sitting in the courtroom with a monitor on my leg.
Right.
We go out for a break after that. My attorney's phone rings, and it's the attorney general's office calling my attorney and telling her they've dismissed the case.
And that's because for that to get dismissed, because you were prior law enforcement, that had to come from the AG.
Yep. So what we ended up finding out later on down the road, once we got to digging through everything and all that kind of stuff, what we believed happened was this new investigator came in. He picked up an old case that had already been closed. He took a bunch of cases in front of the prosecutor, and what he did was he went into the files and he tweaked stuff. So in my case, the investigator that was there before him put in there, the child said that the stepfather was there and witnessed it. There's no evidence of that. The child stated, in the accusation that Mr. Whelchel used his penis. This is a 4-year-old child that wouldn't know that word unless it came from an adult. Like he put exculpatory stuff in his report to say, we don't believe this happened because of this.
He beefed up the charge.
The new investigator went in. The new investigator went in and deleted all that, and basically copied and pasted the report, but omitted all the exculpatory statements, presented it to a prosecutor, and got the warrant. So that's what ended up happening. And I believe that the prosecutor, the solicitor's office, looked at it and said, oh, he's prior law enforcement. He used to work for our county. We're not going to be able to prosecute him anyway. Let's go ahead and get the warrant and send it on down the road because it's not our problem. If it ends up getting dismissed later on, it's not on us. It's on the AG's office. Mm-hmm. So who cares? It's a strike under our belt. We prosecuted him. It's not our fault it got dismissed. That's what we believe happened. It was kind of a political deal to try to get yourself some pats on the back.
Yeah. And you say that, and that's accurate, what you're saying. But what people don't understand is they're talking about your life.
100%.
They're, oh, well, we'll pass it off to him. If it gets dismissed, oh, well. You're talking about somebody's life. You're talking about somebody's future. You've already put them through hell. Just going through this is enough strain to make a man, go crazy. And that's how you're looked at. You're no longer a life. You're no longer Clay Whelchel, you're just a case. That's all you are. You're a statistic on their conviction percentage that they're trying to
And
beef up.
to me, they're just playing chess, and we're just a pawn.
Yeah.
That's really all we are. We're being
Sacrificial.
moved around and manipulated, just to keep their job.
Yeah.
That's
Sacrificial
really
pawn at
all.
that. Not even one that can turn into something major. You're just a sacrificial pawn.
Exactly, because and this is something that I really think that needs to change, especially in our local government. I think we need to quit electing certain positions. I don't think a sheriff should be elected. I really don't, because what you run into is you run into a sheriff that's elected into a county that does a crap job, but he knows the right people and kisses the right butts, and nobody else will run against him. And if they do, they get crushed. So
Yeah.
he just wins year after year after year after year, and he doesn't have to do a good job because he's already been put in. Who else are they gonna vote for?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the same thing with a solicitor. A solicitor should not be an elected position. It should be based on job performance.
I 100%
Solely.
agree on that. When that
Solely on
AG
job.
when that AG called and dropped these charges, how long did it take before everything went through and you got out?
Well, like I said, I was already out on bond.
Okay,
And
that's
so
right. That's right. I'm sorry, you were already out.
I was
Okay.
already out on bond. And if I'm not mistaken, this was a Friday at court. If I'm not, if my memory's right, it was a Friday at court, so we had the weekend, and then they would start the paperwork and stuff the next week. She was
Okay.
just calling to let us know this is what we're doing.
Ah.
Of course, it took a few days for it to go through the system and all that. So I think by the next week, when we were back in court for that trial, I was off the monitor and everything was done.
Okay.
So we ended up going through the family court case, and we actually ended up being found not guilty in that as well. So we ended up, not only did I beat the charges criminally, I beat the charge at a family court level, which, like I said earlier, is only preponderance of evidence.
Right.
All they have to do is be able to say it's a possibility that you did this, not that you did it. It's just possible that it happened.
What was your emotions like after you got the call that the AG had dropped those charges and you knew that this black cloud was off you? Because, and people, don't get me wrong, you're going to work, you're obviously in a lot better position being able to do that and be a functioning member of society. So it's a lot better than being in the county jail, but it's so much pressure because you still know it's looming. You don't know what's coming. You don't know when things are going to happen. Somebody will say, we might do something this week. Then that week passes because somebody had a scheduling conflict. It's just every day waiting to get an answer for, in your case, what would be a terminal diagnosis. And I know the pressures that it was, like on me. I can't imagine what it was like on you. And then to finally have that off of you, what was your feeling?
In that moment, I was so thankful, number one, for that foster mom, because, dude, how easy would it have been for her to not get involved? How easy would it have been for her to just, you got to think about her position. She's taking in kids that were supposedly in an abusive home.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's standing on the abuser's side.
Allegedly.
Saying, no, this didn't happen. Allegedly, yes. But she's standing on that side saying, no, this didn't happen. So the first emotion is super thankful. The second emotion is anger.
Mm-hmm.
I remember during the middle of that trial, they kept me and my wife in a room so that we didn't have to be around the biological parents because of all the emotions. And we were sitting in the room, and the dad to the kids came in the room and wanted to talk. And let's just say they had to get security in there pretty quick because it was because these people, And these people actively tried to ruin my life.
I'll say actively, that definitely changed it for
They,
sure.
they, they, they actively set out on a goal to end me. That was their goal. Their goal was to end me.
All because you help them out and try to give their kids a better home.
They saw me as an enemy for helping them.
Yeah.
When in all reality, I could have went to the courts and said anything about them and it wouldn't have mattered. I could have went to the court and said they are the best parents I've ever seen in my life. Man, they've been giving us $10,000 a month in child support. They've been doing everything they're supposed to do, Judge. That judge can still look at me and say, kick rocks. I don't care what you say.
Yeah.
It wasn't up to me. I didn't have anything to do with it.
Did charges get filed on them after this?
No, absolutely not.
So for them coercing that child and causing all this, they didn't even get charges filed on them. The fuck?
And not only that, the mother, which was had now 2 kids positive with methamphetamines, was never charged for that.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So the system failed in my case all the way around.
Yeah.
The family court side, it should have never gotten. It should have never gotten as far as it got.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if the investigators at DSS did their job, they could have sniffed this out in a couple of hours and saw what this was.
What did they deem caused this with the youngin?
You talking about the baby?
Yeah, the baby. Yeah. What did they do? The whatever.
They're still saying the same thing, but they've turned it now from me and my wife to the daycare, saying that something happened. But you've also got to think, we know because we're in contact with some people that are very close to the situation. This child is perfectly normal.
Right.
He reads, he talks, he walks, he does everything they said he would never do. I don't believe that child had any injuries. I really don't. I believe that this child suffered from some kind of a seizure disorder. I think that he had some kind of a brain issue going on from the drug that was in his system.
Yeah, because
I think that
a seizure, they're going to shake like that. Yeah.
And I honestly believe that they just failed to look into it because once they see those 3 things together, they lock onto something.
And it's easier to paint it as something like that than it is to actually do investigative work and get to the grass details. There's tunnel vision is what it is. They get tunnel vision.
100%. And go ahead.
I was going to say, how do you, at this point, how do you go about rebuilding yourself in the community? Are you supported? Do people still have, thoughts that you may have done and you beat the system? What is the community like as when this is dropped? How are you accepted or not accepted?
So I'm going to be honest with you. When I first got out on bond, it was very bad. Very, very bad.
Yeah.
I got back on social media and started looking, and I mean, it was people that I went to elementary school posting it, talking. The moment that everything was dropped, not one person posted it.
Oh, yeah. That's not interesting then.
No.
It's old news. Nobody cares about it drop.
I will say this, that there was a handful of people. Now, these are just acquaintances, people that I know, but I'm not friends with. All my friends and family stood by me 100%. You got to think, too, this is my wife's family that did this.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife's sitting right here on the couch beside me. We're still strong as ever. She never wavered. She never. It would have been so easy for her to throw me to the wolves and walk away. So easy. She didn't.
It was to her for sticking by you through this because it's you need, without a support system, it's hard to make it in situations like this. So kudos to her. Does she care to make an appearance on screen, or would she rather stay off?
You want to come on and say anything?
If you have any questions, I can answer them.
No questions. You just come on and say hello.
You want to stick your head in? She's good. but and another thing I wanted to say is this is another thing to go out to the system and how screwed up it is. The foster mom on the stand that they said, because the judge asked, he said, "Why have you not said this before?" She said, "I have." She said, "The day that the child told me this, which was 3 days after the 3 days after I went to jail." So we're talking about, what was it, 2 years, a year and a half before this. She called the sheriff's office and spoke to somebody and told them this. She sent emails to DSS and gave them this information. They did nothing with it.
All got buried.
They didn't care. And so and it's surprising that the attorneys for DSS were stupid enough to know that and still call her as a witness. That didn't make a lot of sense. But thank God they were incompetent right there, because
their incompetence actually worked to your benefit on that one.
But it's, as far as the community, man, it's been up and down. I still have issues going out in public, and a lot of it's probably in my own mind of people seeing me and thinking things or saying things or snickering or this and that. But I've never had anybody outright say anything to me. I've never had anybody,
Right.
And so, as far as that goes, I mean, I can't. And like I said, I try to look at it from their point of view. If I was sitting on the outside and I saw that, I'd probably be saying the same stuff. Yeah. I'd be posting the mugshot and talking shit too. You know what I mean?
And that's just a society that we're in these days. If someone makes a mistake, whether they did or didn't do it, it's plastered all over social media. Things are said, people are talking without knowing the facts. And a lot of us just showing their own ignorance and, somebody needing something to talk about. But when, like you said, when it's dropped or when it's reversed, nobody cares to spread that, and if they do, it's maybe one or two here and there. That's not hot gossip. That's not hot news that it got dropped, and then you probably even have a lot of people, "Oh, well, I figured it was going to get dropped." You didn't figure shit. You was talking about it when it happened. You're going along with the narrative now. And,
and I'm slowly getting back to the point where I can walk around kind of with my head held a little higher, to know that all these people thought so little, but yet here I am. But really what it's done to me, man, is it's opened me up to just how screwed up our system is and how screwed up our system can be. Because it doesn't go this way all the time.
Right. And that's what people need to understand.
Most of the time they get it right. But that's the problem. When you're dealing with stuff like this, the word "most" should never come up.
Exactly. I talked with a guy named Jeffrey Deskovic one time, and he broke it down. I think he said it was like 9% of the people that are incarcerated are probably innocent, but is deemed, and 9% is, I think, have been exonerated. That's not saying the ones that are in prison that are not exonerated. So you look, that number could be as high as 15 to 17%. Let's just say it's 15%. If I told you, if you're going to get on an airplane, you're perfectly fine, 70 or 85% of the time, these planes land every time. 15%, they crash, they go down. But 85%, exactly. You're not getting on a fucking plane. Nobody's getting on a plane. Nobody's getting on a plane. Nobody's doing anything with a 15% chance. And when you're talking about doing prison time, that's ridiculous numbers for it to even be fathomable. And you're absolutely right on that. Something really needs to be done. What can be done, how it can be done, that is a problem that we're fighting. But I think one thing that helps matters is getting stories out there like yours, getting stories out there like mine, like Jeffrey's, like Andre Brown's, who done 23 years for something he didn't commit. The more people that can learn about how screwed up and flawed our system is, the more I think the awareness can be raised on it, because it's one of those things, unfortunately, people don't care about, and they don't put a lot of stock into it until it happens to them or somebody they're close to. Let them or their relatives get jammed up in a situation like this, then they become an advocate. That's me myself, and I'll say that was me. I never looked at wrongful incarcerations the way I do before I was almost wrongfully incarcerated. And in your situation, like you said, if that lady don't come to testify, there's a good chance, my friend, you and I are having this conversation.
Oh, 100%. Because they were bound and determined to put me away.
Yeah.
They were doing everything in their power to do that. And let me just say, and this is something else that still to this day I do not understand, and I probably won't ever get this answer. How can you have somebody charged with a crime and go over 2 years with never even asking them one question? They didn't get. All they had to do was come to me and say, "This child said that you did this." I could have dispelled that right on the spot, and all this could have been over with. But they didn't care.
Yeah, didn't care. The solicitor that done all that, is he still? Please tell me he's not still holding that position.
Well, like I said, the solicitor's not the one that ended up going forward with the case. He's the one ended up. This is where things get a little hairy because I don't necessarily blame the solicitor. The solicitor looked at a report from an investigator that gave the wrong information.
I misspoke. That's my. I meant to say investigator. I apologize. Please tell me that investigator.
No. The investigator was terminated from Anderson, went to Greenville, and then was terminated from Greenville within a month, and is now, I think, a land surveyor, right where he fucking belongs. Yeah, and I hope to God one day he watches this. I'm not gonna say any names because I don't want to get anybody any kind of stuff, but keep your ass on the outside. Don't get involved in the justice system anymore because you just don't know what you're doing, and you actively tried to ruin lives, and there's no telling how many more you did it to.
Yeah,
there's no telling.
That's the sad part about it. You're one story that luckily, albeit tragic, made it out, but there's no telling how many people did not. And that's the unfortunate part. I would hope with him having a track record of getting fired, I'm assuming probably mainly for your case in that area, for whatever reason, somewhere else, maybe somebody looked in and done some due diligence to some of the other cases that he was involved in. I hope so.
I can say we did some deep dive, and my sister actually worked at the sheriff's office when all this was going on. So she was kind of behind the scenes trying to do everything she could to poke and pry and try to find out stuff. We ended up finding out that he had only been in law enforcement for a year. So he started out in dispatch and was a dispatcher for as long as it took him to go through the academy. So basically, they gave him a job, put him in dispatch, enrolled him in the academy. He went to the academy, went on the road, and then when the other investigator left, they basically just gave him that position.
Damn, that's a
yeah. So he went from dispatch to investigator, and we're not talking about just investigator. He was the lead investigator over crimes against children. Is what his and he'd only been in law enforcement for a year.
Well, Clay, we're closing in on 2 hours here. I want to close with this question. Being prior law enforcement, being on the other side of seeing how flawed the wrongs kind of law enforcement can handle things, what is your feeling going forward about law enforcement? What is your feeling towards cops going forward from here after everything you've been through, being on their side of the law, being on the other side of the law, being a target unjustly? What is your feelings?
I honestly believe that 90% of them are they have the right thing in their heart and they want to do the right thing. I think a lot of the issue comes from higher up.
Yeah.
I really do. I think your everyday road cop that's out here on the beat that's pulling cars over and doing this and doing that, 90% of them are good. I would say probably 95% of them are good.
What?
But
that 10%.
That 5 to 10% is what can get you. And the issue, I believe, is not necessarily with law enforcement. It's when you start going up the ladder, when you start getting up into investigators, you start getting up into sheriffs, you start getting up into prosecutors and solicitors. That's where your problem is.
Mm-hmm.
Because cops are out here just observing, and basically they're observing something happen. Look, cops are reactionary. Cops are not supposed to be proactive.
Right.
They're not out there making sure somebody doesn't commit a crime. That's not what they're doing. That's not their job. Their job is not to keep somebody from committing a crime. Their job is to respond when somebody does commit a crime. So they're reactive, not proactive.
Right.
And so they're out there just doing a job. Can they screw things up and do things wrong? 100%. They do it all the time. There's a lot more of it that does it the right way, but you still got some that do it the wrong way. And I think over the last 5-10 years, we've seen a lot of that. But when you start getting up into your investigators and your solicitors, these people are no longer out here working with the everyday person. They're not out here pulling people over and getting to know people. And I mean, dude, I couldn't tell you how many times when I was in law enforcement that I would sit and just talk to people, just have conversations. These investigators, they don't do that.
Yeah.
They're on a pedestal above everybody else, and they don't even associate with the regular cops. That's a different class. That's beneath them.
Right.
Same thing with the solicitors and the issue is their jobs, unfortunately, are not dependent on their job performance. It's not. It's not. A solicitor is all about convictions.
Yeah.
Now he can get a charge in front of him for murder, and if he gets a plea deal, guess what? That goes down for conviction.
Oh yeah.
But nobody really knows the details of the thing.
That's why these people have those. People say, "Oh, I got a 98% conviction rate." That number is bullshit. That number is that high because most people don't have the financial means to get a lawyer to do the job that needs to be done to prove you're innocent. So people then cop a plea with the public defender, and because if somebody's facing 20 years and a public defender can say, okay, well, I can guarantee you 7 or 10 or whatever the number is, substantially less than what you're facing, and then possibly even good behavior, depending on the situation, maybe get out sooner than that. Everybody's going to take that if they don't have the financial means to do anything better. And so then you take that, then you're labeled you're felon, you go to jail. That's a conviction for them. And they know that when you get out, it's going to be harder and you're probably going to reoffend because you're trying to make a living and you're going to go right back in there. So that's how they keep that conviction rate so high. It's not that they're doing all this great work by putting bad people away. And I'm not saying that they're not putting bad people away, but unfortunately, innocent people get thrown in the mix. And let's be honest, nobody wants to believe a criminal or who they perceive as a criminal. Because if you take that plea deal, you're admitting to something that you maybe didn't do, but you're admitting to it because you can get less time taking a plea deal. You're looked at by society as a criminal.
Yeah, I mean, it's so sad. It really is. I mean, since I've gone through all this, I've definitely gotten more involved in trying to keep up with some of these cases and some of these people, man, and it's so sad. I mean, there's a guy right now that's still in. He's been in for 23 years, and they've got DNA evidence that proves he didn't do it. But they can't get a judge to relook at the case.
They don't want to admit they're wrong.
No, and that exactly. You know, and that's not what it should be about. That's not what it should be about. It should be about doing the right thing and doing your job to the best of your ability. And like I said, the word most or maybe should never be spoken in a courtroom.
Right.
You shouldn't ever go into a courtroom and hear those words. That's not what we're there for. We need you to know. You have to be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. There's a reason that it's supposed to be like that. You know, and when you've got prosecutors out here copping pleas for, I mean, I'll tell you this, and I'll leave you with this. In my case, I was never offered a plea.
Mm-hmm.
But I found out after my case was dismissed, my attorney told me that the AG told her that they had an offer getting ready to come. And the offer was going to be a child endangerment charge. They was going to drop a CSC first, which is 25 to life, to a felony child endangerment, which would have gave me no jail time. They would have given me 5 years probation, and that would have been it.
Would
now,
you
answer me this.
Would you have taken?
No, I wouldn't have. I would have never taken a plea at all. And that's why they never came to me with one, because I made that very clear from the jump. I'm not ever, you might as well just go and throw me in prison the rest of my life. I'm not ever admitting to something I didn't do. I'll never do that a day in my life.
3 meals over 3 deals.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, and it's just, and that's what I think gets under my skin the most. Because if you had the evidence to get the charge and to get the warrant and to charge this person with this crime, how do you now not have the evidence to follow through with a conviction?
And bump it all the way down. And the reason is they always charge high, knowing they can drop it lower, and they're more apt to, like I said, get that conviction. And the key in what they were going to offer you, the carrot that they were going to dangle, is no jail time. because that is a huge factor in people's decision making. A lot of times people will cop whatever the hell you want them to if they know they can get out of jail and don't have to go back. You can give you 100 years probation. Doesn't matter. You ain't got to be in jail. You know, they're going to take it. And that's the carrot that they dangle. And when you cop to that, then you have no recourse to clear your name because you've admitted to it. And, you know, unfortunately, like I said, it's just one of those situations that I hope people don't find themselves in, because it can have tragic consequences. Fortunately for, you know, it worked out great. I'm glad it worked out great. My continued prayers to you and your wife. I'm glad she, you know, made it through this with you. I know it had to be a trying time for you guys, but, you know, I'm glad everything worked out, and I really appreciate you coming on the program and sharing your story, my friend.
Yes, sir. And I look forward to hearing more from you, and I hope to maybe, maybe somebody will see this and want me to talk about it somewhere else. Because I just think getting the word out and spreading it as much as possible is the only way we're going to be able to help anything.
Absolutely right, my friend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that would do it for today's episode. I'm Hollywood Wade. That was Clay Whelchel. And unfortunately, we are out of time. Tune in next week for an all new episode of Crime and Entertainment. Clay, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, see you, buddy.